Hello, everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about the documentation restructure. We've listened to a lot of feedback from users around ways that we can better organize and present our documentation to you. There's lots of different documentation formats kicking around somewhere, and we wanted to kind of bring that all in line. So what we've done is we've moved away from the more familiar Word document or PDF formats into some interactive HTML documents that are on brand with the gov.uk styling. So we have three core documentation sets at the moment. They are the data model user guide, which you might already be familiar with. We have the technical API documentation, which is an overhaul of some of the ICD documents that we have previously supplied. And then we have new user portal documentation. So that's for the enhanced onboarding experience that again, John Cooper was talking about earlier on in the session. And this is all made available and accessible from a common landing page. So what I'd like to do now is just share my screen and kind of show some of that off, give you a bit of a teaser about what it's going to look like. So this is the landing page that I mentioned that kind of brings everything in line and is a common entry point that you can use to access all the various different forms of documentation that we offer. There's a little bit of information here about actually registering for the service. I'll come on to that a bit later on when we talk more about the onboarding section. So I'll skip down to the documentation links below. So you might remember I said three core documentation sets. The links are available to those here. If we take a look at the API documentation to start with, that will link you through to a page where we have all of our technical API documentation for you to peruse at your will. So this includes a quick start guide, which is something that you guys have mentioned to us before about us not really having. For those who are brand new to the service, how do you just get up and running as quick as possible? How do you start interfacing with the service, creating an account, creating apps, doing that sort of stuff? So we've got a quick start guide that walks you through that, tells you the difference between the integration and production environments, why they exist, why we need them, how you would authenticate your application. We provide code snippets as well for how you would do that from the terminal in something like curl or other programming languages, the expected response types. We have information around actually publishing to the service, so various different ways that you can do that, submitting JSON payloads in the body, submitting JSON files, submitting gzip compressed files as well. And then how do you actually get that data back out? So retrieving a D-TRO by ID or getting all D-TROs in the service. So this is the very kind of like first place you'd go to about how do I get up and running with the service. For those of you who are up and running with the service and you want a little bit more technical information, we now provide some open API docs directly from here. So if I click this link, for the developers on the call, you're probably familiar, if you've worked with APIs before, of Swagger documentation, that sort of stuff, and how this data is presented, or these documentations are presented. We provide that in this format as well. You can download it, or it's available to just view interactively. But again, this explains all the different endpoints that you might be interested in, request sample payloads, response samples, the kinds of responses you'll get back, what happens in the case of an error, and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully there's a robust set of technical documentation that explains to you how to use the API. Moving to this format also makes it easier for us to update much quicker than before. A static document could be updated, but then it would be placed somewhere that you'd need to actively go and download it again, make sure you have the most up-to-date version. So moving to this approach is really a benefit for you and for us in terms of maintaining it. We also provide a Postman collection as well. So if you're using Postman for testing, or even not for testing, if you're actually submitting orders to the service or consuming data from the service, rather than having to handcraft those or look at the API docs and work out how you translate that into a request in Postman, we provide a collection that you can just download. It's a JSON file, and then you can import it into your Postman instance, and you should get all of those endpoints of interest with pre-ready requests, bodies, and everything ready to go. All you need to do is authenticate with the service to get an access token and plug your access token in. Everything should start working. In addition, we also provide some snippets. So snippets is something we've been talking about for a little while, providing commonly requested D-TRO payloads. So we've made those available. This list is certainly going to grow. We're kind of in the infancy of bringing these in line with the into this documentation, but hopefully these things start to give you a really in-depth set of documentation on how we actually interface with the service, and I mean, you can get up and running with it much quicker and easier. So that's the API documentation. The data model user guide, I mentioned you might be familiar with this. This at the moment, or previously existed as a PDF format available on the GitHub, the public D-TRO GitHub. We've translated the whole thing to HTML. So you can navigate through this document. You've got nice cross-reference links. You can download things, etc. All the things that you kind of expect. So that's quite a nice task for us to have completed around the data model. I won't go through all of this because it's quite a large document. If you've read it in detail, you'll understand. The last piece is around the user portal. So the enhanced onboarding experience, we've got a little bit more on this later, so I won't spoil the surprise really, but we've got documentation on what is it, why do we need it, how do I use it, how do I create an account, once I've done that, how do I log in, how do I create applications, all that sort of stuff. So there should be, hopefully, across the API docs, the data model docs and the user portal docs, a really, really nice, robust set of modern looking, easily navigable and useful documentation for you to use with the service.